So this is about grant writing. I actually started my first year teaching writing grants just because I noticed there was things my kids needed and I needed and we didn't have it. So I went and found a grant and started writing them. I am not an English major by any means. I am not amazing with words, so it has nothing to do with that. It is more about what is the meat of your writing than are you grammatically correct. They don't care necessarily about that. They care about what are you trying to get and why. So with grant writing, your biggest thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have some research. It does take a little time to write grants. They're not just pop something out and there you go, you're going to go win it. You've got to do a little research with it. And you've got to advocate for yourself as well as your students. You've got to tell the judges, who are you and what do you need? And why do you need it? They need to understand who and what the funding is for in order for them to dive in and want to give you the money. They also need to know how is it going to enhance your students' education? Because if you're just buying something just to have some fun thing to turn them over to, they're not going to grant you that grant. They want to know that this is going to help students better their lives. Now, you will have to take some time with your research to know what is some of the outcomes. And you might not know that, and that's okay. When I first started writing grants for Feria Labs, all I knew is what I absolutely loved, and I put that in the grant. I started saying, okay, while I was taking this training, I started talking to some of my students about what I was learning, and their excitement got me excited, and now I want a class set of these robots. And that was my first grant with Feria Labs, and I have a class set of every single thing they have. I am working on the one for drones, but I literally have a class set of everything because I love their product and I love watching my students grow from it. I promise if you will put forth a little time for these grants, it will be worth it in the end. And I'm going to tell you how to get there, I promise. So finding grants. This is one of the harder parts, is finding a grant that fits what you're trying to get. So your first option is go to your administrator. They get tons of emails about grant opportunities. And I've literally had them tell me, I just delete those. I ain't got time to read those. I don't have time to write those. And they just delete them. So I have gotten in with all of the principals I've ever had and was like, hey, when you get a grant opportunity, all you need to do is forward to me and then you can delete. I will take care of the rest. I will see, is it something we can do? Is it something we have time to do? Does it apply to anything we need? So I always ask them to forward me any grants they ever get. Just please don't delete them. Then ask your district personnel. A lot of times, especially if you have like a STEM coordinator in your district or career coaches or instructional coaches, a lot of times they will also hear about grants before you do. So it's always great to get in with them and kind of tell them what you're looking for. And if they get emails, they'll forward to you as well. Pay attention to your state organization newsletters. For example, I'm in Alabama, so I'm in Alabama Education Association. I get an email about every 2-3 weeks. I look at it. There is grant opportunities in there almost every single time. They might not apply to me, but they might. So I always read those kind of things. I'm also in Civil Air Patrol. They put out an educator grant. I'm in a lot of organizations, but I read them. I take the time to read the newsletters because a lot of times they will have grants hidden down in those newsletters. And I'm like, whoa, this is an easy app. Here we go. Let's apply for this and let's get this. Please pay attention to those newsletters. Don't just delete them. And all you got to do is read highlights because a lot of times they'll have a bullet that says grants and I just go straight to that, or Control F and write the word grant and see what shows up. Then you also have social media groups. Any organization I join the social media group. No, I don't have time to read every post they do, but I do glance at them just to see if there's any grants that they're posting about. And then I go apply for them. I'm in a lot of STEM and cyber groups because I do teach cybersecurity and it's an expensive field to get the equipment for your students. And it's expensive for robotics. It's expensive for computer science. All of those take money. And unfortunately, our schools don't have that kind of funding to truly support us the way that we need them to. And so I go and find grants for it. Get involved with your local civic organizations. I'm personally a member of Civitans. And because of that, I talked my club into giving some STEM scholarships. I don't allow it to come to me just because I am a member, but I know what's needed. And so I am a judge of those applications. Optimist Club in my area gives a STEM grant every single year. Sometimes it's 500, sometimes it's 1,000, sometimes it's 1,500. It all kind of depends. Rotary, all of those kind of things are going to give you STEM grants. If you're a member of Civil Air Patrol or the Air Force Association, those have educator grants that can be applied for Feria Labs. I've written them several several times. Start small, write a grant that can get you 2 or 3, and then write 3 or 4 of those, and eventually you'll have a class set. And lastly, Google. There are thousands of grants out there, and a lot of them go unawarded because people don't apply. So always Google, but you got to be a good Googler. I tell my students, you can be successful in this world if you can learn how to effectively Google. So an example that I did with Googling is I literally Googled STEM grants for teachers, and I looked at everything that popped up, and there were hundreds of them that came up that applied currently. Some of them were passed. So what I do, I put it on my calendar. When was that due date? I'm going to make it a month before, and I'm going to go see if I can find that grant next year. Because a lot of times they have already passed on the due dates, but hey, they usually offer them more than 1 year. So that's always a great opportunity as well. And then these are the actual steps to take. First, obviously, you've got to do your research. Get to know the company or group that's going to be funding your grant. The more you can tie what you're doing into their beliefs and their mottos and their visions, the more likely you are to win that grant. You've got to know what their vision is for this grant itself, as well as for their company or organization. And make sure that you include any students that can relate to that as well. If you can put personal stories in there, that's going to help, because it gives that personal side that they can really feel like they know who you are and who your students are. You also want to know the data about what you're trying to get funded. For example, with Feria Labs, we are always trying to get statistical data about how did this help our students improve? Did this help with any reading scores? What kind of demographics did this touch? Things like that. If you can include anything like that in your grant, any statistical data will always go a long way. You also want to look at any past data. If you've personally used, like let's say you have 2 or 3 and you're trying to get a class. I was able to do this with a few students this year because I only have 2 or 3, and look at the growth that they had. Is there any way you could help me fund to get some more so I can reach more students? They love that kind of wording. But you also need this data, collect the data as you're using it, even with the ones you're getting free with this seminar this summer. Utilize those in your classroom and collect that data. Do some pre-tests with the kids. Do some post-test surveys with the kids. Create a quick Google form and pop it up. And then you've got your data both pre and post that you can talk about. How did it excite them? How did it motivate them to want to learn more? What kind of scores were they getting in science that this improved it? What about math? Because this has a lot of math in it as well, and they don't like to hear that, but it honestly helps their math scores a lot. I was a math teacher for a very long time. You also need to get your school data. I was always very close with my registrar, so she could print this out for me. You've got to know how many free and reduced lunch are in your school. You've got to know the gender breakdown of the school as well as your classes. You've got to know the ethnicity breakdown of the school and your classes. And what is the total number of students in each grade? Because a lot of grants out there, the more you can show you're helping students that not necessarily are usually in this field, the more likely you are to get these kind of grants, especially females, other ethnicities, low income, all of those kind of things are eye catchers. It doesn't mean you have to have that situation. It just can help. So the more of this kind of statistical data, the better off you're going to be. And again, this is usually like takes 5 minutes for my registrar to print it off for me. And she just gives it to me because it doesn't have any student names on it. And so she's able to legally give that to me. And I can include those in my grant. You need to make a budget. Anytime you're applying for a grant, you need to write down, what are you applying for? Where are you getting it from? How much is it going to cost? Put some quotes in there. Basically fill it out like you're filling out a purchase order for your school, because then when you win the grant, you just hand all that to your registrar and it's done. And you don't have to think back. Plus, I write a lot of grants, and there were years that I wrote like 7 and 8 grants in the first few months of school. And when I won them, I was like, that's awesome. And then I'm sitting there going, so which one was this? And what did I write this for? And so I keep a folder in my Google Drive that's literally grants. And I label them by what is the grant. And then I put a copy of my budget. I put a copy of my application. If it's a Google form that you're filling out, I print screen it and print it in there and put it in that Google Drive so that when I win the grant, I can go back and say, oh, that's what this one's for. Okay. Because I do write a lot of grants, not just for myself, but for others as well. But you're going to want every detail that you're going to need for a purchase order. You're going to need it for the budget as well. And even if they don't ask for one, that can come in handy in grants because it shows you've done your research and you're more likely to win it. Have someone else at your school look over it, but also have someone that's not in your school, because a lot of times the people that are reading these are not educators. They're not going to understand educator lingo. So if you have someone that's not an educator looking over your grants, they'll be like, okay, what does this mean? And you're like, okay. And so you need to go and describe that in there. Because again, educators versus non-educators, we have our own lingo and people outside just don't understand it. Like an IEP or a 504. People that are not in education are not going to get that. And I had to think a lot about that when I was writing the first few grants I wrote, because I had a bad tendency to include acronyms that then I got feedback saying, we don't know what any of this is. We don't know what you're talking about. So you've got to put that kind of stuff. And if you can put hyperlinks in an application, that's always great too, because that gives them somewhere to go and look at what you're actually talking about and videos and things like that. And then have someone in your school read it, because they're going to know what you do. They're going to know your kids, and they might think of something that they're like, hey, why don't you include this? Because I think that would help with this. And you've not thought of it, but it would be a great addition. So always have someone both sides, outside of class, inside of class, looking over it. I even let my students write it to begin with, and then I edit it, to be honest, nowadays, because I teach high school. Make a copy of the entire presentation and file it. Like I was saying, I always file everything because I am never going to remember what I applied for. I'll be honest. I apply way too much these days. And then I also attached a cheat sheet that one of our instructional coaches gave me quite a few years ago. It's more about the data you're having to collect from your district or from your school. And it just kind of has the information. So it's like a little fill in the blank sheet that you can fill out to fill it out first week of school. And then you've got it for any grant that comes up